All right, if we wanted to determine our cost per servable pound, the first thing we need to do is calculate the yield percentage, and then we're going to divide the AP price, the purchase price, by the yield percentage. So here's an example. We would want to calculate our ratio of servable weight to original weight using servable rate, dividing it by original weight, times 100. So if you remember back in our previous example, that's where these numbers are coming from. Remember here, 20 pounds, 4 ounces. Our edible portion was 11 pounds, 3 ounces. So here's our 11 pounds, 3 ounces, our 20 pounds, 4 ounces. Now think back to math. We need to convert everything to ounces. We couldn't, it would be difficult to keep a mixture of pounds and ounces. So that's why you see this 16 ounces per pound. All we're doing is we're taking the 11 pounds times 16 ounces per pound. We're converting everything to ounces. If we had 11 pounds, 3 ounces, that is the same as 179 ounces. Go ahead and put this on pause and make sure that you can convert 20 pounds, 4 ounces into all ounces. And again, we got this 20 pounds, 4 ounces here, our as purchased weight. So how would you convert 20 pounds, 4 ounces into all ounces? We're going to take 20 times 16, and then we're going to add the 4 ounces. And you see that here. So we have 179 ounces divided by 324 ounces. We multiply it by 100, and that's where we got our ratio of servable weight to original weight. Here's servable to original as 55%. So that means that 55.25% of the purchase weight of the beef ribs would be available for service to guests. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find out the cost per servable pound. We're going to take the AP price divided by the yield percentage. So here's our yield percentage up here. We converted it to a decimal. So we could have just skipped this multiplying by 100 and you would have had it. And there's our as purchase price of $5.95, which we got back here in this part of the problem. Okay. So there's $5.95 divided by the percentage equals $10.77 if we rounded it. That's our cost per servable pound. That's what it costs us to serve per pound the beef or whatever we were looking at. If we didn't use the yield percentage, we just took the $5.95 and we divided it by the amount we yielded, we would have a completely wrong answer. So that's why we have to do this percentage up here, so we can kind of understand how much it costs us per pound. Rewind this, do what you need to get this information, because this is something that's important for the class. Okay, so once we have that information, we need to know how much should be purchased. So we know that when we purchase all this beef, we're not going to get 20 pounds of servings. So that's why it's so nice to have that yield percentage right here. So we need to figure out what's our quantity. So say I'm going to make 50 portions, and I want each portion to be 8 ounces, and I know my yield percentage is 55%. We know that we need to purchase 724 ounces of meat. Since we can't exactly go to the store and say, or to our vendor and say, I need 724 ounces, we need to use the term pounds. We're going to go back and we're going to convert the ounces back into pounds. We're going to take 724 ounces divided by 16 ounces, because 16 ounces in a pound. So we know we need 45.26 pounds, which will yield us about 25 pounds approximately of edible portion. So all we're doing is we're looking at the edible portion, the total purchase portion, kind of playing around with the numbers. So if we were looking back at this original, what did we have that menu? I guess that was a menu item. Okay, so if we were looking back at oven prepared beef rib, we would need to know how much we needed to purchase. And we know that we would need to purchase about 25 pounds. to yield 50 8-ounce portions. All right, cost factor. This is just a ratio, a factor that you'll need to know how to do as well. You're going to look at the cost per servable pound, which we had figured out earlier, divided by our at purchase price. And that gives us a cost factor of 1.81. So then we have a new price, AP price, times cost factor. There's our new cost per servable pound. The math here isn't difficult, you just need to understand the concepts behind why you're doing this. Okay, another thing we need to come up with is knowing if we're going to adjust a recipe. So say you had a recipe that made 100 portions, but you are serving a party that has needs 225 portions. So our standard recipe made 100, but this is a wedding and we needed to make 225 portions for our guests. We need to figure out what we're going to adjust each ingredient by. So that's the adjustment factor. So we take our desired yield, our 225 portions, and we look at the original yield that our recipe gives us, 100, and we know that we need to multiply every ingredient by this adjustment factor of 2.25. So going back to our beef or whatever that our recipe is, we had the serving amount as 8 ounces. We have an adjustment factor of 2.25. So our new amount would be 18 ounces or 1 pound, 2 ounces. Sometimes you have to make an adjustment, the same number of portions but different portion size. So say this is the wedding and we had planned on 8 ounces per serving, but the bride and groom wanted 12-ounce servings. We need to come up with an adjustment factor for that. So we would take our desired amount of 8 ounces divided by our original amount of 12 ounces, and we have 0.67. So if our original, I'm sorry, this is the other way around. We're making the portions smaller. So if our original amount was 30 pounds, we would multiply it by our adjustment factor of 0.67, and now we know we just need to buy 20 pounds of meat instead of 30. You need to be comfortable for the test with converting things and adjusting things. That would be a common test question, as I'm sure you'll figure out from your practice quizzes, which some of you have been great about doing, others not so much. So make sure you're using the practice quizzes. Before the midterm, I will add more questions into the quizzes and expect for you to go back through them a second time. You'll need to do that in order to score well on the midterm. Recipe adjustment, different number of portions and different portion sizes. So we got really crazy. We wanted to change the number of portions and the portion sizes. So you would look at the following equations. The total volume of desired yield, the volume of original yield. There's our adjustment factor. 75 portions times 6-ounce portions. That's what we want. We want 75 6-ounce portions. The original yield was 54-ounce portions. So we're going to multiply these. 75 times 6 is 450 ounces. 50 times 4 is 200 ounces. We divide them and we get 2.25. 2.25 is our adjustment factor. All right. Don't want these PowerPoints to get too long, so I'm going to pause here and pick up at standard portion costs.